It didn't mean very much, did it? Very pleasant to watch, of course, but we didn't know who they were, or where they were going, or why. Let's now go on with the same piece of film, only now we'll put a commentary on it.
You may call it superstition, magic, or religion. Whatever you call it, this man is still a priest, because this is the cult of voodoo. This is a secret ceremony. It happens just once every year, and it happens on the island of Haiti. In this waterfall, there lives a powerful god, or so they believe. And every year, the faithful come, for love or fear, to appease that god. The result is this fantastic ritual. You may not believe in voodoo, but you cannot possibly doubt the power it has over these people.
To me, writing words to fit pictures is a very exciting business. And there are two sides to it, of course. There's the creative side, what you actually want to write and why you want to write it. But the technical side of it, as far as I'm concerned, is also a very satisfying craft. Now, I'm going to show you my way of doing it. There are other ways, of course, but I happen to think that my way is easier. Now, this is a foot of 35mm film, and it has 16 frames. And you'll find, writing in English, that on average you can write 2 words to every foot of film like this. Now, this is the most important thing of all to remember. Now, that is a piece of 16mm film. It's shorter, as you can see, but it also has 16 frames, and therefore it takes the same length of time to go through the projector, and on average, again, it covers 2 words. Now, on our machines, we measure here in units of 16 frames on a footage counter, and we call it a 35mm foot, whether it's 35mm or not. Now, 1 foot is 2/3 of a second, so if you haven't got a footage counter like this, you can in fact measure it in seconds and then write 3 words to a second. But you'll find that this method is very much easier if you can possibly do it this way. Right, now then, we've got a film on the machine here, and we're all ready to go. The thing to do is to have a look at it. So here we are. We'll run straight through the film. There's a bridge, we can see that, and it's got some cars running over it. In fact, this is San Francisco. We pull back, we can see it's San Francisco now. This is a film about the hippies in San Francisco, and it's a fairly slow introduction, which we shall want to cover with commentary. There's the town, and here cars going through the town. And here are the hippies. 2 more, and some more. It's quite a simple piece of film to write. There we are, and so it goes on, but that's enough to be going on with. Now, we'll run it back to the beginning. Now, what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to sit here and write a script trying to make the words fit the picture and running the picture backwards and forwards. I don't think this is the time or the place to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a shot list. Now, you'll notice that I haven't asked the film editor to make the list for me, because what he sees in any picture and what I might want to remember are 2 totally different things, or very probably, so I'm going to make the shot list myself. And here we are. Now, here's the end of the leader. Come to the first frame, and I set the footage counter at 0. Right, here we go. First shot is the bridge, pan down to the cars. There they are. And the moment they come into view, that's 9 feet. So I write down on my shot list here, bridge, 9 feet, and run on. You can see the cars going over the bridge. We pull out. I think I'd better make a note of where they pull out, and I'll put cars to pull out, and that's 17 feet. On we go. Pulling right out. There. That's the cut. Right. Long shot of the river, and the shot ends at 26 feet. Now then, you'll notice that I'm putting the footages at the end of each shot, and if you get that wrong, you're in very serious trouble. That's a zoom into San Francisco. So we want to know the point at which we can see the town. It's just about there, 28 feet. Zoom in on town. There's the town, and the shot ends there. Move it back to the last frame, which is 34 feet. Town. 34 feet. Now the traffic. And there's nothing very important that we want to notice in the middle of this. Yes, there is. There's that car there, and this is a film about hippies, so that car's quite important. So I make a note that the car comes in at 43 feet. It's one all covered in flowers, and I think it lasts to the end of the shot, if I remember rightly. Yes, it does. It lasts to the end of the shot, which is 48 feet. Now, there's a man with hair and a guitar. That's what I remember about him. It's what I want to remember anyway. Hair and guitar. I shall remember him. 53. He finishes that. And a man in a hat. Now, anybody else might notice something different about that shot, but if I write man in a hat, I shall remember. Man in hat. And he ends at 57. And there's a young family. Now, if I want to say, oh yes, they've got 2 small children, I want to know when they come in. If I'm going to say it doesn't matter what age you start being a hippie or something like that, I shall want to know the exact point at which they come in. There's twins in at 61, and the shot ends at 67. And so we go on relentlessly to the end of the film, shot by shot. And when we've got the shot list, I go away. In fact, I come home to write the script. I don't need to see the film again. I know every shot, I know what's in them, and I know how long they are. So I can sit here with a sheet of paper and a few reference books and the shot list, and I can write a commentary working at 2 words to the foot, a commentary that will fit the picture. Now, when we get into the dubbing theatre, we shall have another footage counter exactly like the one in the cutting room. So I can decide the precise moment at which I want my reader to start speaking, and I can mark it down on paper. In this case, let's make it 5 feet. Now then, the cars come in at 9 feet. That leaves me 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That leaves me 4 feet or 8 words before the cars arrive. Now let's see. San Francisco. It's rather long, 2 words. We'll call it 3. Packed with people. And all, apparently, in cars. Now then, I've covered the first shot, and the word in cars comes over the beginning of the shot where the cars are in shot. So there we are. Incidentally, there's one very important thing to remember, and that is that pictures make their impact on the eye immediately. Words take longer. You don't usually get the full meaning of a sentence until the end of it. So, if you're writing to pictures, you have to make sure that the point at which your picture makes its impact coincides exactly with the point at which your words make sense. And that usually means that you have to cover the cuts between shots. Now, I've finished my first paragraph, and I know where it starts, here at 5 feet from the beginning. So if I count the number of words, I can work out where it's going to end. San Francisco, we said that was 3 words, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 words, 5.5 feet, 5.5 plus 5, that sentence will end at 10.5 feet. Now, supposing I don't mind where a sentence begins, but I do mind where it finishes. Take that painted car. If I want to write not all the cars nowadays, look exactly the same. And I want that sentence to end at exactly the point at which the car comes into shot. I marked it, remember? Here we are, car in at 43. Now, all I have to do is count up the number of words. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 words. That's 4.5 feet. If I cue the speaker to start speaking 4.5 feet before 43, that's 38.5 feet. If he starts there, it'll end exactly as the car comes into shot. And so you see, working with a shot list at 2 words to a foot, providing you can add up and subtract, you're in business. And that's the basic technique. Apart from the dubbing, of course. But that's only part of it. What really is fascinating is what you can do with the words you write, the actual job that they achieve. For instance, take a piece of film with 3 apparently unconnected sections. The first sequence is simple enough. It's obviously a world exhibition. In fact, it's New York. But these pictures give no indication whatever that the next picture is going to be an odd-looking vehicle with round wheels. And there's no clue from these shots that we're about to be faced with a man picking up a gramophone record from a collection of apparently unrelated objects. It's the commentator's job to link those 3 sequences and make grammatical sense out of the story.
In New York in 1964, they held a World Fair, not only to glorify the present and the past, but also the future, even in space. They showed not only what it will be like to travel on the moon, but for the benefit of future moon-dwelling generations, they buried a time capsule containing a record of the Beatles and several other proud possessions as well. A neat little packet of pills, though nothing to say what was in them. A packet of cigarettes with no instructions on how to light them, and a set of contact lenses. An odd collection? Yes, but then it was an odd world in 1964.
You very often have to cover cuts like that. In fact, when there's no visual link between 2 shots, and you'd be surprised how often there isn't, it's the writer's job to make his audience subconsciously demand the next shot, and particularly if it happens to be a man speaking. Now, introducing speakers is an old, old problem. Not only so that we know who the speaker is, but if possible, so that we have some interest in what he's going to say. Now, there are dozens of different ways of doing it. Here's one way.
Thousands of people all coming together to one place to hear just one man speak. The place is Earl's Court, London. The man is Billy Graham.
I'm going to ask you to get up out of your seat all over this building, scores of you. Men and women and young people, get up out of your seat right now and come and stand in front of this platform, and you're saying by coming, I receive Christ openly. And father, mother, young person, whoever you are, this is God's moment and God's hour for you. You get up and come. We're going to wait right now.
It's marvelous when you get a compelling speaker like that, because that's the time when you can keep quiet and let him do the talking. Not that you have to write over every shot, of course. In fact, in general, the less you write, the better. The problem is knowing when and how to stop writing. For instance, this is Elgar, the composer.
As a young man, Elgar would ride on his bicycle for miles and miles, exploring every part of the Malvern Hills. And as he rode over those endless, lonely hills, he would compose music in his head, mentally writing the score and working out one great theme after another. He had no need to write his music down, no need even for a piano. He could hear every tune perfectly in his head, and he could remember every note. The more he traveled, the more music there was waiting to be written down when at last he got home. It was great music, though at the time nobody, not even Elgar himself, believed that it would ever be performed.
There's nothing wrong with doing it like that, but there is in fact a better way. Supposing instead of having commentary all the way through, we just have one line of commentary and then let the music take over.
As a young man, Elgar rode over the Malvern Hills for hour after hour. And as he rode, so the music came flooding into his head.
might think that all this, fitting in with music, covering cuts, writing sentences so they finish exactly at the point where the house blows up or where the policeman's trousers fall off, all this would be a lot easier if we wrote the words first and then cut the pictures to fit the words afterwards. Now, it is very often done, but personally I think it's the wrong way of going about it. I believe that the pictures have got to come first and the words have got to come afterwards. And basically there are two reasons. Firstly, it isn't always easier for the writer or the film editor to do it that way round. And secondly, and much more important, you cannot compress or cut pictures as easily as you can compress or cut words. I believe that within a given context, pictures have an exact visual length. If you cut them too short, they lose their full impact. If you stretch them to be too long, then they become boring. Once you know why you are using a picture, what it's actually there for, it does have an exact visual length. Now, words are quite different. Any writer can ramble on for as long as you like, and he can cut if he has to. So, we've tried an experiment. We've taken some film shots, printed them twice, and cut them both ways. First of all, what I think is the wrong way, words first, pictures afterwards. Bernard has taken a commentary, which I've written and pre-recorded, here it is, and he's cut his shots as nearly as possible to fit this commentary. Here it is. It used to be just an ordinary English village. You might see one or two locals about the place now and then, but you could never have called it crowded. And then it happened. Castle Combe was voted the prettiest village in England, and suddenly it was full of people. Nice for the publican and the shopkeepers, of course, a bit disturbing for the vicar as they streamed in and out of the church. Cars, radios, children's sandwiches, bottles of pop, they all came streaming in just because the village was supposed to be pretty. Perhaps it was before they came. Did you notice how the editor had to make his pictures jump about in order to keep up with the words? And even then, sometimes he didn't quite make it, no matter how hard he tried. Now let's try it the other way. The same rushes and the same story. The director has told us why he shot the picture, so we know what the story is. Now, the editor has taken those rushes, he's edited them together, I've shot-listed it, written a commentary, and recorded it. And let's see what the differences are. It used to be just an ordinary village, the sort of place you might find anywhere in England, old, sleepy, and very picturesque. And that's what caused the trouble. Castle Combe was so picturesque that they voted it the prettiest village in England. From then on, everyone's privacy was gone. They came in thousands, and they came by car. Nose to tail, pumping exhaust, blocking every road and every lane that leads to Castle Combe. In all its long history, the village had never seen any invasion like this. All very well for the shopkeepers, perhaps. After all, nobody minds doing a week's trade in less than an hour, even if it is all ice creams and lemonade. And let's face it, they didn't do much harm. Castle Combe is still the prettiest village in England. At least it is in the evenings, when all the visitors have gone home. You see, the editor had an opportunity of using the director's shots to the best possible advantage without having to follow the words that I'd already written for him. And incidentally, if film's cut as well as that one is, it makes it very much easier to write. Another thing I want to show you, something else that the writer can do, is to make you see the part of the picture that he wants you to see. Obviously, it's a marketplace, but that doesn't mean to say that I have to talk about markets. By drawing your attention to that bus coming into the square, I could talk about public transport. Have you noticed the statue? It was there all along, and I could have made you look at it rather than the bus. Or indeed, if we're talking about markets, I can make you look at either the people or what's being sold. We might be interested in the parcel that the lady has in her hand, or one of the girls, perhaps. Whatever detail the writer sees in these kind of shots, it's fairly easy for him to make his audience look just at that one thing. Would you have noticed the statue if I hadn't mentioned it? There's another reason, as far as I'm concerned, for working quietly at home. You see, it sounds obvious, I know, but you've got time to think. You've got two great advantages over your audiences, and it takes a certain amount of thought to make use of them properly. First of all, you've seen the film and they haven't. Now, this means that you can tell what is in fact going to happen as well as what's actually happening now. And secondly, when you're dealing with people, you have an opportunity of analyzing what they're thinking, of knowing why they're going to do something which you know they're just going to do. Some while ago, I wrote a commentary to a marvelous Japanese film about a miner. Now, this bit of it doesn't make any sense at all unless you know what's going on in his mind. You may already know that he's suffering from carbon monoxide poisoning. You may even know that he's still in hospital. But even so, these pictures of a man fumbling with a cigarette and a box of matches don't have very much impact. When he does eventually manage to get a cigarette out of a packet, put it in his mouth and light it, you don't have any reason for thinking that this is really any more important than anyone else lighting or smoking a cigarette. Now then, let's find out what really is going on in that man's mind and see what it's all about.
For 3 weeks, he's been trying desperately to remember. He knows it's a cigarette, but he can't remember what it's for. He can't remember his name. He doesn't know what happened or where he is. Poisoned in the coal mine by carbon monoxide gas, his memory is gone, and he has to get it back. He knows it goes in his mouth, but he can't remember why. And a week later, he's still trying. And something is just coming through. Just a minute recollection. Just a simple thing. The cigarette is lit with matches. The first memory to come back, the very first recollection that makes any kind of sense. He knows now he is going to remember.
There are all sorts of tricks, of course. For instance, if you're using numbers, you can make a crowd of 95 people sound quite a lot if you say over 90, and you can make them sound quite few if you say less than 100. You can talk about things apparently unrelated to the picture, providing you connect the two with what you say. For instance, take these people in the street. Nothing whatever to do with the flu epidemic. But there's no reason on earth why you shouldn't talk about flu and use these pictures, providing you connect what you say with what you actually see in the picture. Like this.
These people may not know it yet, but if the epidemic continues, out of every 25 of these men and women, 7 will be in bed with flu before the month is over.
Remember, when you're writing that kind of commentary, or for that matter, any words to pictures, it's absolutely vital that what you say springs out of the pictures in the minds of the audience. If it doesn't, the pictures will win every time. Unless what you're saying is related absolutely to the pictures on the screen, they'll see, but they won't hear. But connect the two, and you have terrifying power. For instance, let's try it with those hippies in San Francisco. The fact of the matter is that most people don't understand them, even though their message is simple enough. It's clearly advertised that hippies aren't setting out to do any harm. And even if they do look a bit weird at first sight, their aims seem hard to argue with. Admittedly, they're inclined to show off, but most of us have been guilty of that at one time or another. They want their children to grow up in a world without war. Their methods may look a bit ineffectual, but their purpose is above suspicion. Let's face it, nobody anywhere has ever managed to do away with fighting up to now. And come to think of it, no other group has ever done quite so much to publicize love. And if they have to play Ring a Ring of Roses to do it, well, what's it matter? What they're actually saying is sometimes hard to understand, and some people wish they'd spend rather less time painting weird pictures and rather more time washing. But let's face it, you don't have to look at the paintings or get within smelling distance if you don't want to. So before you dismiss their weird costumes, and before you sneer at their morals, just ask yourself two questions. First, how much harm have they ever done to you? And secondly, are you quite sure you aren't just a little bit jealous? And there is another point of view.
You can dismiss these people as a weird but unimportant lovesick cult if you want to, but it's surely better to face the plain and obvious facts. Hippies are drug addicts. Hardly any of them work. Opting out of responsibility, they blatantly dismiss moral standards. They scrounge off other people to keep alive, and in return, they merely provide a macabre public spectacle. What they do to the minds of their children is yet to be discovered. How they affect each other makes a terrifying picture. They think that they have a world solution to the problem of war and hate. Love, they say. Give each other flowers, hold hands and dance your troubles away. But it never seems to occur to them that there are other ways to stop the fighting. We'd all much rather love than hate, even if we don't take drugs and live in a psychedelic nightmare. They're incapable of realizing that we know war is terrible. And even if it doesn't look like it, these hippies do live in the same world as we do. If they directed some of this amorous energy into actually working for peace, instead of lying down and trying to forget, we might all have a chance to love each other in our own way.
The responsibility is enormous, but that's what makes any kind of writing worthwhile. And it isn't only what you say, it's how you say it. It makes an enormous amount of difference if you're writing for somebody you know well, in my opinion, preferably an actor. I'll read one commentary straight, and then we'll have another one written specially for the actor who speaks it. A straight one first. For the men travelling to Scapa Flow during the war, it was a long, cold journey. 700 miles to the north of Scotland. 700 miles from London and the comparative safety of home. Climbing up through the winter landscape of the Highlands in an unheated, crowded train. And this was just the beginning of the journey. A cold, dangerous journey by ship. The convoy route to Russia.
The dawn came up over a long, slow train, packed with cold, unshaven men. Never stopping, but climbing up over the desolate moors, carrying husbands away from wives and sons away from mothers. 700 miles of try and forget about home and try not to think about where you're going. The train to Scapa Flow, the first inevitable step on that most bitter journey to Russia by sea.
Now, we've talked about the technique of making words fit pictures, and we've dealt with some of the craft of writing. But lastly, let's look at one of the most exciting places connected with making films. This is a small cinema, basically, but it's much more than that, because this is a dubbing theatre. This part of the theatre is fairly simple. It has a cinema screen, and underneath it a footage counter, very much like the one in the cutting rooms, only bigger. In front of the screen and facing it sits the man who's going to read the commentary. On his desk, he has a light which the producer or the dubbing editor can switch on when they want him to start speaking. Obviously, he can watch the numbers himself and get some idea of when his cue's coming up, but he takes his exact cue from the light. Here comes the film. And in this case, the first cue comes at 13 feet. Watch. The light will come up 1 foot before, just time enough for him to draw breath.
20,000 feet of solid snow and ice, and every step has to be cut with an axe.
In here, we have the business end of the operation. The gramophones and tape recorders providing extra sound effects and music, the dubbing mixer bringing in the right sounds at the right moment and balancing the whole lot together, and the producer following the script and giving the reader his cues.
And as the leader moves up higher and higher, below him the second man pays out the rope, ready at any moment to hold the leader if he slips and falls.
69 next.
At these altitudes, the strain of making camp is 6 or 7 times as exhausting as it would be on the ground. Water boils before it gets properly hot.
Right, Digger, let's stop there because I want to pause in this paragraph. Dick, could we, at the 69 footage paragraph, put a 2-second pause before the word water boils?
You can see that it has to be pretty exact. And if it isn't right the first time, then in this modern theatre, we can run the film back a bit and do the same section again.
So you're going back, presumably, to the beginning?
No, I can pick it up from about 50, so we can cue you in on the 69 cue only.
Thanks very much, Digger. Fine, splendid.
Right, okay, you ready to go, Dick?
Yes, thanks very much. When you are.
Right, let's...
Right, here we go. Standby projection, here we're going to take. Standby recording, going again.
At these altitudes, the strain of making camp is 6 or 7 times as exhausting as it would be on the ground. Water boils before it gets properly hot.
Of course, not all the effects are on gram or on tape. A lot of the sounds have already been laid against the film in the cutting room. There may be as many as half a dozen tracks all running at the same time and all ready for the dubbing mixer to bring in when he wants them. And to do this, he has his own script, rather like an orchestral score. It's very like recording a symphony. Every piece, words, music, sound effects coming in at exactly the right time and at exactly the right volume. And incidentally, you don't have to use a footage counter to dub a film. You can do it without, if you have to, simply by marking the film with a pencil. To show you what it's like, we'll do the last cue again, simply with marks on the film.
At these altitudes, the strain of making camp is 6 or 7 times as exhausting as it would be on the ground.
It all looks pretty complicated, doesn't it? And to some extent it is. But you'll find when you've mastered the basic technique that most of it is really just common sense. Making films is a very exciting business. And to me, at any rate, writing is the most exciting part of all.
And all the time, the wind blows and goes on blowing. The last 1,000 feet, and every step is agony. And the only thing that drives them on is the top of the mountain, just up above. And only here, at last, they can stop.